All right, well, welcome everyone. This is the Golden Gate Computer Society monthly meeting. And we have our special guest, Dale Miller, which I will have Ron do the introduction. So go ahead and take it, Ron.
Dale has been a friend of mine for, I don't know how many years, Dale. But anyway, he is the person that got me interested. He also talked to our retirement group about electric vehicles and the comparison, and he gave a nice, very nice talk about that. Tonight, we're asking him to tell us about these advances in solar and maybe artificial intelligence in some of the vehicles, and if there's any standardization going. And if you can see his background, he's got the GGCS logo on the back. So, also, a thing you ought to know about Dale is he has no gas in his home. It's all electric, and he has electric vehicles. So he practices what he preaches. Dale?
Thanks, Ron. If I can, I was last time I was there was almost exactly 2 years ago. And so we can take a look at what's happened in the meantime as far as electric vehicles. You've probably heard the announcements from the governor's office today about electric vehicle advances in California. It's the second best selling vehicle in the state in 2021 was an electric car. And in 2022, it's likely to be the best-selling vehicle in the state. Worldwide, the market share has tripled last year, even with supply chain problems, COVID. It's just growing rapidly. Some of the countries that have been pushing electric cars for a while have almost all plug-in cars now. Norway, 72% of the new cars and almost 95% of the cars sold in Norway had a plug. So some of them were plug-in hybrids. The demand is really high if you're trying to buy an electric car. If you want one, get on the list because the waiting list for electric cars is long. Hearing people waiting 8 months, 9 months, a year. A lot more brands and models are available now being delivered and a lot more coming. A lot more public charging than there was before. You can see it all over the place. Marin has a lot more than 2 years ago. It's going to be a Tesla supercharger at the Whole Foods in San Rafael. It's already permitted, so they've changed their parking lot around there, and you'll see it charging stations going in there. Some will go in out in West Marin. There's a group working on charging there of all types. And we're seeing this not just in personal vehicles, but things like police cars. We get calls at our organization with city managers looking for organizations that can put the radios and sirens on Teslas because they realize they're saving so much more money with their going to electric with police cars and fleet vehicles. School buses all over California, trucks. We'll see a lot more electric semis in the next few years because they'll be delivered probably during 2021, some of them. And companies like Amazon have big contracts for delivery vehicles. And the saddest part of delivery vehicles right now is the fact that the post office has issued a contract for gas vehicles to replace its fleet. Our member of Congress, Representative Hoffman, was trying to get legislation to block that. Believe it or not, the post office fleet in the United States is, I think he said, the largest fleet in the world in terms of vehicles in one fleet. And if you know, kind of watch how the mail delivery works, it's ideal for electric vehicles. Lots of short stop-start trips. They don't go very far, just perfect application for electric vehicles. So this transition is not just about batteries and electric motors and the powertrain. A lot of it is due to software. And that's changing a lot of, go back here, changing a lot of things. The way people buy vehicles is different. How vehicles are made. It's not like the old-fashioned car manufacturing plants that have been running for 100 years. Service and repairs are changing. And we're changing our actions to reduce the climate crisis impact because we have electric vehicles. And there's a potential, as well as direct, even now, impact on the economy, and driving experience is different. And all of this is enabled by the software capabilities we have now, but didn't have a few years ago, as well as the internet mobile phone network. So we can connect everything, and behind it all, the advances in artificial intelligence to use the big data that's being collected. And the legacy automakers recognize that. The second largest automaker in the world by volume is Volkswagen, and their CEO has been under a lot of pressure from the people that don't want him to move as quickly into electric vehicles. They're concerned about losing their jobs, et cetera, because their specialty is making something for EVs, for gas cars rather than EVs. And he's recognized that software is the only way forward, and those companies with the best software are going to do the best. So buying vehicles, if you're looking for an electric car, most of them are being sold online. The customer sits in their living room and picks the options and places the order online with a deposit with Apple Pay or on their credit card. They don't negotiate prices. They don't go to the dealer and sit at a desk and have the salesperson go back and forth into a manager's office supposedly, or go get coffee while they're trying to change prices or options for the cars. No dealer markups. You may have heard that some of the Ford Mach-E electric cars have been marked up as much as $10,000 over the manufacturer's suggested price because there's high demand. And same is happening with some of the GM orders for the electric pickups, so that GM and Ford have told the dealers they're going to restrict their deliveries. They'll cut the quantity of vehicles they're getting if they don't stop doing dealer markups. This whole having to deal with going in and negotiating for a car, getting a value of your trade-in, is being recognized. If you watch any sports on television, the ads, you'll see a lot of ads about buy your car online, never go to a dealer. And those where women were not especially recognized in a dealership unless they came in with a man, those things are being pushed in ads for the online sales. So you can take pictures of your car, send it in with the information they have on the VIN of your vehicle identification number of your car. You get your trade-in quote online, you arrange how to pay for the new vehicle, and it will show up in your driveway. So it's not the same as it used to be at all. This is happening with the no dealers because initially they recognized that the dealers wouldn't really meet the needs of selling the number of cars they need to sell, electric cars, to get going. So Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid have no dealers at all. You're buying directly from the company and you're buying online. You may have also heard that Nissan is struggling with that whole issue of how do they fit into that. And you may have heard the ad where they're saying, look how excited you are when you get a toaster that you ordered from online. Think how excited you'd be if you ordered a new Nissan car and had it show up in your driveway. Used cars are the same, and Carvana, Shift, Vroom, Tesla, and more sell used cars online. Huge search capabilities on their database of used cars. The information backing that up from the accident kinds of information that are out there to tell whether a car's in an accident or not, being able to determine values of cars, makes it easy for people to search for the car they want without going around to dealer lots. And most of these offer you test drive periods and a return time period. So dealers really weren't going to sell electric cars, and they've been opposed to electric vehicles. We found that in our organization, trying to get them to promote electric vehicles. And initially, the ownership of the organization realized that they weren't going to get any revenue from maintenance. And one of the biggest sources of revenue for a car dealership is the maintenance. You come in for repairs or a warranty service, or getting money from the company to do that. So in West Virginia, the Association of Auto Dealers has actually gotten a bill introduced in their state legislature that would ban over-the-air updates on cars. So you couldn't send out software to change anything except the entertainment system or possibly the navigation system. That would be illegal. If you wanted to change anything, fix a feature or fix a bug in software, the customer would have to come into the dealership and the dealer would get paid for loading that software onto your car. EV sales just took too much time and effort at dealerships because people asked questions. With gas cars, they would pick a color. They knew pretty much what car they wanted, and it wasn't a big deal. There was a negotiation over how much the used car trade-in might be and what options or aftermarket options the dealer could convince the person to buy. But when people came in looking at EVs, they wanted to know how far they would go on a charge, how long the battery lasts, all these questions. And the salespeople didn't want to spend that much time and effort to deal with this because most of the time they didn't have the answers anyway. GM made its Cadillac dealers an offer. You can quit or you can equip your dealership to sell their Lyric electric car. Means putting in some charging and training all your people to sell and service electric cars. A third of their dealers decided they weren't going to be dealers. They took the option to bail out. And we still have a lot of states that prohibit a direct sale of electric cars to consumers. So people are not able to go into a store like a Tesla store or Rivian show place, look at the vehicle and order it. They have to look at it. The person in the store can't tell them anything about prices, and they would have to go home and order it online. For manufacturers building electric cars and having them ordered online, it's an advantage for them because they don't build a whole bunch of vehicles based on their guess of what people want. And then if they have a bunch of extras, they make a deal with a rental car to pick them up cheap, a rental car agency. They can get reservations for new models online, plus people are putting down a couple $100 deposits so they know where their demand is and what they should be making. They know where to put their service centers because their systems will tell them where these cars are all going and where they're going to have a concentration of vehicles. And so they can place service centers in centralized locations to their customers to make it easier for their customers to bring the cars in for service. They can change prices easily. When you order a car online, the website's going to tell you the price, and it's easier for them to raise prices if they don't have thousands of cars in their parking lots with the price already on the window sticker in the whole supply chain out toward the dealerships. So they can take advantage of that. And of course, they're not sharing any of the profit with the dealers. Easier to design electric cars, a lot more flexibility in design. You can build in more safety features. If you think about the fact that you don't have to worry about space for this large engine and drive the tunnel through the car that provides a hump in the back seat for the drive shaft going back. You don't have to worry about how you're designing the exhaust system so that the passengers in the car won't be poisoned with carbon monoxide. And where do you put this 20-gallon or so gas tank to make sure that all of this is safe? They have some advantages in building in a lot of safety features that allow them to look at keeping these cars in the lane, collision avoidance systems, because they already have powerful processors in the car, and they can take advantage of that. We've seen in the last year that some companies, especially Tesla, have changed components of their cars by changing the software. The fact that they couldn't get certain chips, they would just change the operating system to run on a different processor that they could get, so they could keep making cars because the software would operate with a different processor, and all they had to do is change that rather than sit and wait until they could get those components from the manufacturers. And it allows a lot more automation in manufacturing and design with the software once they start developing this and have the database of information plus all of this software automated design tools. And because electric cars have fewer parts, they can manage their suppliers easier. And again, I'll mention the whole supply chain issue, number of suppliers they have to deal with, much less. So another quote from our friend Herbert Diess of Volkswagen: "The era of the classic car makers is over." And we're really seeing that as everybody is shifting to electric. And part of that, again, is the less maintenance. For the consumer, it's no oil changes, no filters, no sprung checks. Saves the consumer time, money, but it costs the dealer in revenue. The simplicity of electric motors compared to gas engines, the simplicity of electric cars, you look at all of these pieces and parts that go into it, makes a big difference. And the fact that these cars can be engineered for 1 million miles the way you build over the road semis makes it much, much better for the individual drivers. So, and the whole idea of taking the car in for service is not what you do anymore unless you have to have a physical component dealt with. Functions, features, over-the-air updates, just like your phone. Of course, climate action. Again, there was a report by the International Panel on Climate Change in the UN today that we better get our act together quickly. We're missing a lot of deadlines. We have species becoming extinct because we're not moving quickly enough. And as you know, the greenhouse gases, air pollution, fine particulates from gas and diesel engines is a big problem. And that's being recognized nationally. We're seeing like the Build Better Act in Congress, new gas car mileage standards have been issued again. California's gotten the authority to be the leader again and set their own standards for mileage per gallon requirements for new cars. And we've got states acting to promote electric vehicles, setting deadlines for when gas engine cars can no longer be sold. And here in Marin, 40 to 60% of our greenhouse gases are from gas cars, exhaust pipe, people going through Marin. We don't have much industry in Marin producing greenhouse gases. So our biggest impact is from our vehicles. And the whole process of getting fuel to us, getting it found, gotten out of the ground, piped somewhere, hauled somewhere, refined and in cars. Each step of the process contributes to our climate change process because of the emissions and pollution from each step. The batteries, we always get questions about the batteries being big items. They're reusable, recyclable. There's now businesses recycling batteries. So they're just not being dumped in landfills, and they're providing another source of the materials we need. The CEO of Redwood Materials was a big battery recycling company that recycles a lot of car batteries that are damaged in accidents or completely useless batteries. Said one of the biggest supplies of lithium in the United States is in people's junk drawers. So lots of us have cell phones, remote controls, other things with lithium-ion batteries laying around. And if we recycle all of this stuff, there's a lot of minerals we don't have to mine because they will be available to us cheaper and easier with less polluting steps in the process. So the most effective action you can take to slow climate change as an individual is switch to an electric car. Next step is to make your house all electric, but easy to start by switching to an electric car. So we're hearing a lot these days about gas prices, right? I don't buy gas, so I have to just go by what I hear on the news. And when I drive by a gas station, if I see what the price is out on the sign. But we really live in a world that's a petroleum-based economy. The price of oil affects the world's financial markets. Oil prices shoot up. Watch what happens on the stock market. As far as an individual family, if gas prices go up, it really hurts. The biggest item for many families and what they spend, that biggest line item is gasoline to get to work. And so the impact of that politically, and then we're seeing now with Ukraine war and political unrest affect gas prices. So we can do better than that by getting away from gas without that impact. One of the things that's happening in the state of California is gas tax is a per gallon tax that goes to the roads. Excuse me. Electric cars don't buy gas, so they don't pay a gas tax, but every model year 2020 or later electric car pays $100 extra on its license plates for a road improvement tax. So if you look at my estimate I've heard is that about 225, 250 cars a week, electric cars are being delivered in Marin. So that's $20,000 just each week being added every time these cars add license renewal. And you look at how that multiplies is once we get to all of our 250,000 cars in Marin are are electric. $100 a year for each of those goes into the road improvement funds that goes to Caltrans. So if you look at that from many individuals, especially during COVID, a Prius driver is highly unlikely to spend $100 a year in gas taxes. So these electric cars that were sitting in garages because people weren't going anywhere for COVID were helping to pay for the roads. California has the largest US car factory. The Tesla Fremont factory is the biggest car factory in the United States. Lots of companies have many factories, but they don't produce as many cars from one location. And in 2020, the export value of the cars made in Fremont and shipped to other countries was $5.6 billion. So that's a big advantage for us to be producing electric cars here in California. So you look at the world economy will shift directly when people aren't using gas vehicles, aren't worried about gas pipelines and who it is that's controlling the petroleum supply. From the state, we're looking at having extra money from our people not spending as much to help our state economy and the fact that we have this industry with lots of jobs in California. But from an individual driver's perspective, and it's really relevant now, we have the highest electricity rates around, I think. The cheapest electricity rate, if you're on the EV rate, is 21 cents a kilowatt hour. And that amounts to roughly a nickel a mile for electricity with an electric car. If you've got a typical gas car, $5 a gallon for gasoline, you're spending about 20 cents a mile for gas. So look at your credit card bill. You've got lots of money going to the gas stations. You could cut that down with having an electric car. So the electric vehicle rate still is a good deal compared to tiered electric rates. It's not a tiered rate. So you pay the same price no matter how much electricity you use for your house and car. So taking advantage of those special electricity rates. If you have solar on your roof, you're even better off. And there's lots of free public charging around now, and many of the new cars come with several years of free charging. I have a neighbor that just got a Volkswagen ID4 electric, and she's getting 3 years of free charging at the Electrify America charging spots, and they happen to be right where she goes to her work. And so it's easy for her, even though it'd probably be more convenient to plug in at work, she can actually get free charging for the next 3 years for that she drives that car. And when you send money to the electric, to pay your electric bill, that tends to stay here in California. The money you would have sent to the gas station is likely to go to an international company. And it turns out the more we use our electrical grid without the need to add capacity to the grid, the bills for everyone should drop because the CPUC should at least make sure that the profit stays within the guidelines for the utilities. So these electricity costs aren't related to geopolitical conflicts. Solar, wind, and water, once you put the unit in, once you have the dams, once you have the solar on your roof, it just sits there producing electricity. And it's not related to the oil prices or the whims of a dictator. We've seen the prices of electric cars come down, actually, in some of the models that have been out for a long time. Some of them have gone up again over the past few months because of the demand. Realize that there's such demand, they can raise those. But if you compare what you get with an electric car in terms of features, the prices of new cars are pretty much on par with the equivalent features in a gas car. So they're getting close to what people think is think of the price of a car when they're thinking about cars. There's still some rebates and tax credits, and those are changing. Hopefully, more of those. There depends on prices of the cars. Some of them depend on your income. Of course, tax does. So the lower operational costs, and in some cases, low monthly leases, there aren't as many of those now because of the demand, and the affordable used cars make it so that electric cars really are an affordable option. And the biggest deal is this is not a sacrifice for most people to get an electric car. You're not giving up anything. You're getting the better driving experience that includes the quick acceleration, the high-speed cars. If you want one, you can get a production cars now are the fastest cars being made. They're responsive, the handling and snow, all of that is so much better. Smooth, quiet. Single pedal driving, for those, if you have an electric car, you know what I'm talking about. The regenerative braking, especially in heavy traffic. As you ease up on the accelerator, the car is generating electricity to go back into the battery. That slows the car down, and it's not moving your foot from the brake pedal accelerator back and forth as you go down 101. One of the options still available, lots more catches to it, are the carpool sticker that will ease that somewhat as far as our traffic coming back after COVID here. But the whole process saves your brakes because the car isn't using the typical old-fashioned friction brakes as much. And it's more efficient because you're recapturing energy that would have been wasted in heat on those brakes. And most of the cars now are using kind of, you have to have your phone as your basis of controlling the car, right? Your phone is the key into the car. You can control charging from remotely on your phone, start it, stop it, know when the car is charged. Makes a big difference, especially if you have the car parked somewhere where you're using a charging station that will charge you after your battery is full. They'll start applying a fee for parking there because you're done charging and they want you to move so someone else can use it. You can control the climate settings in the car so you don't have to get into a warm car on a hot day, cold car on a cooler day. Car will warm up to the temperature you want. You can just start that with your phone. And you can schedule service and get all of the information about whether or not your cars are ready to go. You need new tires. You can set that up on your app on the car, and you'll know when they're on, new tires are on the car, and it'll be ready to pick up, and you can pay for that service with your app. So that convenience plus never going to the gas station. As I mentioned before, possibly carpool lane stickers depending on your income and how many times you buy a new car, the over-the-air software updates, and mobile service. You don't even have to take the car sometimes. One of the biggest concerns too is safety, and electric cars have the highest safety ratings because of the design and of the car itself. So this car is safer in crashes, plus the fact that you've got these systems on the car that can handle self-driving features and safety alerts, automatic emergency braking, lane departures, those kinds of things. make the cars safe, have the highest safety ratings. They just spark joy. More and more people say, I love my electric car. One of the things that changed in the last 2 years is the driving distance. People were concerned. The first cars that came out had less than 100 miles of driving distance and you had to recharge. Now you can buy cars with 500 miles of driving distance on a single charge. And most of the cars now, you can get 5 to 6 hours of driving that the car will keep running, but most humans shouldn't be or can't drive for 5 to 6 hours without stopping for a restroom break or something to eat or drink to keep them alert. So if you think about your average commutes, whatever that is, 40 miles, now you'd end up not having to ever worry about whether or not you're going to have a long enough driving distance on the car. So having to go somewhere to buy fuel, big pain. Electric car charged in your garage. You start out charging at home, you're done. You don't have to do anything, plug it in when you're home, unplug to go. And as I mentioned before, lots more charging available publicly at shopping centers, hotels, resorts, workplaces. And there'll be more and more along the interstate within the next few years, lots of them now. So most of the charging is done at home currently. And for many of us in Marin that live in houses, that's not a big deal. If you're in an apartment or a condo, it becomes more of a challenge. Electricity in your home is the lowest, full every morning. And one of the interesting features about that is the fact that if you're starting out with a full driving distance, you may be better off in many situations than the person that starts out and says, gosh, I've got to stop for gas on my way because my car isn't full. We saw examples of that a few months ago. Maybe it hasn't been a month and a half, 2 months ago, when we had the long traffic jam during the storm in Washington, DC. And people were stuck for something like 26 hours. Those people that were in electric cars that left home on their way to Washington sat there keeping warm without any risk of running out of gas, because electric cars don't use any energy except for the climate control and perhaps your lights and in the car and your entertainment system. So electric cars can go for about at least 24 hours, 26 hours for many of them, parked on the highway, stuck in the traffic jam. So we heard people who were opposed to electric cars saying, gosh, what would have happened if everyone had electric cars? For most of them, they would have been much better off than in their gas car, running their heater for a while, then turning it off to save gas and then turning it on again when they got too cold to stand it. So one of the other things that we've heard about in the last 2 years, and there are now products available, vehicle to home, where you can use your car battery for home backup. It sounds great on the surface, but when you think about it, your car has to be at home for that to work. So if you want to keep your freezer running, your refrigerator running, and you want to go somewhere, unplugging the car to go somewhere is going to turn off your house electrical backup. And it's expensive to use a $40,000, $30,000 car for a backup system, and when you could get stationary batteries working off your solar for half that amount of money. But for some people, it's a big plus and the reason they want an electric car. So So I mentioned before, lots more charging, and most of it is now much faster than ever before. The cars are charging at roughly at the rate of 1,000 miles per hour. So you think about these cars with big batteries, 500-mile driving distance. You're not parking very long to fill up that battery during a road trip. And we've got a bunch of those high-powered charging in Marin, in Nevada, the Electrify America thing by the Safeway in Nevada is at that rate. And lots of the others that you'll see around are at that high charge rate. So again, summarizing, best driving experience, electric cars. One thing to think about, electric cars are about the same price as a gas car. Think about how much money you're spending for a car and what is the resale value of that car going to be? And when you have someone looking at a car now and what they'll spend, and the fact that in 2030, the goal is that there will be no gas cars sold in California, how much is your gas car going to be worth? You just as well get an electric car. They currently have the best resale value, and that is likely to keep going, as well as enjoying the benefits in the meantime. So the message to your friends and to you, don't buy or lease a new vehicle with a gas or diesel engine. And try to answer any questions.
All right, well,
we should do that.
Dale, thank you very much. That was awesome. Why don't we go ahead and stop sharing so we can get a full view of everyone in Hollywood Square mode.
So we can do
And,
that.
there's your information. So if anybody wants to write that down, ggeva.org. Go to that website, and then we'll take a couple of questions here.
Okay.
And probably,